So sometimes I like to come out to the countryside in the middle of nowhere and basically just clear my head. Stuck inside a lot these days with work, and it doesn't do the dog's mental health any good either if I'm stuck at home the whole time. When I make these trips, I'm usually driving 25 or 30 miles away from home. I'm in the middle of nowhere, and it makes me think about what I would do if my truck broke down way the heck out here. Or those big scenarios that I like to call the all fall down scenarios. And this topic came up in discussion a little while ago with a friend of mine. He was looking at buying a DMR rifle, and he asked me which one he should buy. And after talking him back from the ledge of buying a $5,000 to $7,000 rifle that weighs 20 pounds, that takes very heavy ammo and stuff, I got to thinking, I should do a video on this. And then I got to hearing, about, these clone military guns that people are buying, and I was, that concerns me. Let's put it that way. When I hear people thinking this way, because I feel that they're not necessarily really putting a lot of critical thought into what they're building and what a scenario is likely to look like. So hence this video. But before I get into it, please hit like, subscribe, ding that bell, get over to Full 30, subscribe with us there, and pause the video if you need to go over to Full 30 and find us there too. Range Tech US over there as well. In those not familiar with us, we are a training company that experts from, and we have over 100 years of combined expertise, policing to military and spec ops and all sorts of other fun stuff out there too. But anyway, back to it. Let's get at this. Let's talk about these silly guns that people like to own. So, silly gun, DMR, big heavy caliber, for the roided up super soldier who can carry 200 pounds on their back, this is awesome. Me personally, I like to think I'm a fairly strong guy. I know that with a 70-pound pack on, 6 miles with that big pack on, I'm probably done for the day. That's enough for me. And if I got to carry a 20-pound rifle and another 10 pounds of ammo for it, I'm not going to get that far every day. And there's some other concerns that arise from that. And this is where I'm talking about the critical thinking and thinking this whole scenario through that I have in mind. So I call this the all fall down scenario. Everything's collapsed, possibly. There's a major weather or environmental event or something like that. So you could, take for example, the Cascadia Fault goes on the west coast of the U.S., and the infrastructure, the roads, everything is wiped out. There's no way of getting either in or out of that place in a vehicle. Anyway, this brings me back to, thinking through this scenario properly and fully. If I am, say for example, traveling in California, heaven forbid, and this happens, for example, or really outside any major city or something like that, or in the countryside, and maybe I work, 30 miles from home, and something happens that prevents me from being able to get home. Okay? I guess this could be a solar flare too that fries electronics everywhere. Now I've got to get home. I may have my family with me or I may not. Basically, you're down to what you can carry, what you and your family can carry. And if you have this big honkin' freaking heavy rifle, which you're likely not even going to bring with you because it's so big and heavy and honky, you're not gonna even have it with you. So this is where I start suggesting to people, start looking at building something like an SPR. And I use that term loosely. When I say SPR, I'm talking about building up an AR for what its original stoner intention was, which was to be a very accurate light caliber that does enormous damage ballistically. And I'm talking internal ballistically, I'm not talking external ballistics. So, for example, um, one of the things I consider is ammo weight. I can carry 3 times the ammo if I wanted to with a 5.56 or 2.23 round than I can with a 308 for the same number of rounds. So I look at that and I think, okay, if I can carry the same equivalent amount, say 120 rounds, which is, small, really it should be twice that probably for a typical loadout while you're traveling, I can then carry a lot more food and water with me and expend a lot less calories than I would if I was carrying really heavy ammo and a really heavy rifle with me. Now, that's even besides the fact that, with an SPR rifle, with the appropriate optics, and more on that in a minute, I can engage targets either at distance or close up from CQB to 600 a lot faster than I can with a scoped rifle, or even one with, like, say, a Trijicon, for example. Now, even though the Trijicon does have a ballistic drop reticle in a lot of cases, it is limiting, and it is a form of telescopic sight, so it doesn't have that field of view that, say, an EOTech would. It doesn't have to be an EOTech, but what I'm going to show you here is that you can take an EOTech, for example, where you have a laser holographic sight that adjusts to different distances while maintaining that dot size at 1 MOA and be extremely, extremely accurate. So with that 1 MOA dot and, say, like a Alpha Terek from Tacom HQ, and maybe a magnifier if you don't have super strong long distance vision, you're so much better off overall for just about any situation than you would be if you had a big heavy DMR rifle, because that lighter SPR rifle can then be made to function short range, long everywhere all the way out to 600 yards, and it can be done very quickly and accurately with little to no training. There's a few other considerations you want to make, though. I would switch out the trigger to something like a TriggerTech adjustable AR trigger, and I would set it towards the high side of its adjustment. That'll give me, that'll maintain trigger feel, even if my hands are cold and I'm stuck outside for days on end. But it'll also give me the performance of other triggers that have to be set at much lower trigger weights. And that's because the TriggerTech is such a crisp break. I think it's the most crisp break there is. So it feels lighter than it actually is, and I have that comment quite a bit from people who use the rifles that I've built. Now, moving on from that, I could also then look at what parts of this rifle I can use as dual use, for example. Right away, if I have a magnifier on there, I've got a monocular. I could pop that thing off there and string it around my neck, and while I'm hiking along the road trying to get home, I can look off in the distance and look for either somebody who might possibly give me grief or my family grief, and then avoid them overall. I can use that to sit and gather sort of personal intelligence that's relative, to me tactically and defensively, because the last thing I want to do if I'm in this situation is have to engage with anybody. Like the saying goes, the first fight you win is the fight you don't get, you avoid. Basically, you don't get in. So if I can avoid that by being able to see 1,000 yards or more with a magnifier, and yes, you can do that with these little magnifiers. You can see a heck of a long ways, and you can pick up a lot of movement and stuff. So I'm right away better off, and with a lighter rifle that I can, flip that magnifier off to the side or even remove it, I now have something that I can maintain. I can do CQB with. I can have a defensive rifle if I'm inside a building somewhere and we're camped out for the night, etc., and we're moving on. it's a lot easier to maneuver that through the brush, as well. So, I'm glad also that my friend did ultimately take my advice and start looking at an SPR rifle instead of a DMR type rifle. I think the clincher for him overall, though, and his fantasy about what it would, what the DMR would be like as a defensive rifle, came down to the ammo cost. And when I told him that you're looking at $36 or $40 a box for 308 versus $12.99 a box for decent 5.56 ammo, he was like, he started to think like, for some reason that's where it clicked with him. And it's unfortunate, but that's quite often the way people think, and they think with their checkbook instead of thinking, fully, like, critically. And really, and with that, in the topic of ammo, let's also mention too that if you really want to make this system shine and really make it accurate and make it forgiving in how it shoots, you could even just have like 2 or 3 mags of 70 to 77 grain match hollow point ammo loaded into mags, and you could have another 3 that are just loaded with some kind of tactical hollow point that's maybe a little less expensive in a 55 grain. So that said, you probably have an SPR type rifle in your kit, in that closet of yours, without even realizing. So give it a little thought, look at the optics out there. There's Aimpoint, there's EOTech. I personally prefer EOTech, even though it has the downfall of not having as great a battery life, because EOTech has the dot with the circle around it, and that circle for me is a really key thing for CQB work. So that's why another reason I chose EOTech. The downfall to EOTech is that it does not have the auto on, auto off, and it doesn't have that 50,000 hour battery life. So there's definitely some trade-offs there. For me personally, those trade-offs were worth it because I can carry extra batteries, and within my kit on my truck I actually have a solar panel tucked in there, and I can recharge batteries on the fly. So that's it for now, guys. I hope you guys found that useful. I hope you'll think it out on your next purchase or on how you're adapting your kit. And heaven forbid we do end up in a situation like this scenario I laid out for you. But given the last decade and back to Hurricane Katrina and stuff like this, you could end up in this situation. People have ended up in this situation, where things fell apart just from something as simple as a storm, and people were being shot at by crazies out there. So if you can avoid those crazies out there, you're just so much better off. I'm going to leave it right there, guys. Thanks for all the support. Welcome to the new subscribers. Love to have you guys here, and I hope you find a lot of value in this channel. And for those that don't know, please check out Range Tech US and all the training that we're offering. We're adding a bunch of new courses as well too, and we really think outside the box. We're not one of these courses that just regurgitates the same information, and we're not trying to reinvent the wheel as well too by telling you silly stuff like that trigger press doesn't matter. So that's it for now, guys. Talk to you soon.